blow this up.
Look Alive Bomb Squad, we are back for another installment of Let's Blow This Up. I am your host, Jason Sircone, and today I am joined by the only person to almost have as many appearances on this podcast as me, the one and only Jay Franze. What's up, Jay?
Sir, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing well, my friends. So today we've come together to make a podcast, as we've done many, many times.
Is that what we're doing? I thought you promised me steak.
Oh, you want to go down the steak route? I can get it for you in 5 minutes because that's all the time it takes to cook one.
All right, moving on.
Yeah, I figured that would shut you up. Okay, so let's talk about the right and wrong approaches to growing a podcast. And this is one of those subjects that I think, obviously, we're not going to be able to cover everything today because there's so much that you can do and there's so many things that you shouldn't do. But ultimately, it's really...
hours.
Right? Yeah. It's not like the live stream where you can just go. These are 30-minute deep dives, my friend. We've got to stick to that. I know this is your first time in the co-host collective, just you and me. I know me, you, and Mark sat down and did an episode that will come out later in the season. But talking about the growth strategies, I know that this is, again, you having a podcast, the Jay Franze Show. We've talked about this off the mic many times about different things that we're doing. But I know that there's a lot of bullshit out there. There are a lot of things that I know people try. They think that this is the next best thing to do. But I look at growth from a more realistic standpoint, and I don't try to put a blanket approach on top of this for everyone. Let's start with positives first. So thinking about growing your show, again, if you're trying to use the cookie cutter approach that everybody else is doing, more than likely you're going to fail because not every strategy is meant for every podcast. I look at the way that I roll out content in season format. I know that the growth is going to be a little bit different. And I'm cool with that because this is all by design. And this, to me, is what works. So in your experience, what have you discovered is a good growth strategy that's helped you get your show up and moving?
I'll start off. The most important thing that I have found in my journey so far is good quality content.
Okay.
I mean, I think that is hands down the most important thing because no matter what else you do, if you attract somebody to your show and your content isn't good, they're gone. Podcast doesn't grow. So the very first thing you have to do is have the fundamentals down and make sure that your content is spot on. It's serving a purpose, whether that purpose be educating somebody or just entertaining somebody. Your content has to be quality.
I am with you there 100%. Jump back in the archives, Bomb Squad. You can hear my conversation with Charlie Krebs from the live stream series. We talked about that very thing. There are so many moving pieces when it comes to podcasting, and a lot of it is gaining attention. You've got to capture somebody's attention with your show art, with your episode covers, with your titles, good show notes, all of these things. If you do that part of your job and you do everything right and they click play, if your content sucks, they're gone. Just like you just said, Jay. It's one of those things that I feel that I see this posted a lot in these Facebook communities that I'm in, and I don't know if it's an ego stroke. I don't know if it's legitimate, but a lot of people will go in there. I'm on my 10th episode and I'm getting 500, 600, 700 episode downloads an episode. Great. Like, okay, like good for you. If those are legitimate numbers, that's fantastic. But how's your content? Is it going to sustain those numbers? Or if you achieve or aspire to bigger numbers, how's your content? That's the first question I think everybody has to ask themselves is my content getting better or at least trending in a direction where it's going to continue to bring people in and keep them there? That's, again, content first. You're absolutely right.
Well, that's just it. I think I would prefer slow, steady growth than come out of the gate strong and lose people. I want to go in the proper direction versus the wrong direction.
And I know that's been brought up on this season too. If you're not ready for that growth, you have some type of huge spike, but your content isn't justified, or I mean, especially from a business standpoint, if you're using your podcast to grow your business and generate leads and position yourself as an authority, you can't just expect things to fall into place if you're not making the right moves and if you're not focusing on how you build out that content. It's just things are going to unravel, and it's going to happen very fast. But if you get that huge audience that might come in for an influx, maybe something goes viral, right, and your content isn't good, they're going to be like, what the hell did I click on? And then those numbers quickly diminish, and then you're back at square one.
Well, we could take the rabbit trail on that, which we probably should not. But it goes down to this new thing with YouTube, and 1 second is a play on YouTube. So if somebody can click on your show for a second and say, and bail. So it might look like you've got a great jump out of the gate, but you might not actually have that jump you think you do. But one thing you mentioned in there that I think is important to growth is you mentioned artwork and titles. I think both of those things are another foundational piece when it comes to putting your show together to experience growth, because your title, first and foremost, I know that we go back and forth and we choose to break the rule when it comes to titles, and I get that. But if you want to see proper growth, there is a formula to putting a title together, and that's keyword centric. It's making sure that the listener knows exactly what they're going to experience when they click on that title. So having a good title and something that will draw the attention for the listener is absolutely a must. And then when they do click on it and they see your album artwork or your podcast cover artwork, you want that to grab their attention as well. And you need to think about it too. What a lot of people aren't thinking about is what it looks like at a size of a dime, because you still have to understand and be able to, even if you can't read it 100%, you want to know what you're going to get if you click on it. So simple is better in most cases.
Agreed. Canva is your friend. And
yes.
I would have to think that the majority of podcasters know what Canva is, or they're using it, because there's no excuse for, what was it called? Microsoft Paint?
Right, yes.
And I say that tongue in cheek because I've still seen covers out there that look like that.
Paint pixel by pixel. Yep.
Exactly. Now, we talk about content and the impact you can make. It's all about that first impression. If you're looking to grow, there's a number of factors in play that are going to dictate whether you grow or whether you lose that person that just discovered your podcast. And this is where the art really comes into play. I mean, art as a whole, not just like the art is part of it. The science of this. It
the
starts
art of putting
with
the show together.
Well, okay, there you go. Perfect. The art of building this podcast, it starts with having a good title for your show or a good show name, having that cover art, and then episode titles that jump out. Those are the first three things that somebody is going to experience when they find your podcast, especially if they're doing a search on a player like Apple Podcasts or Spotify. So as they go through those three things, they're scrolling. Ooh, that cover grabbed my eye. That's a cool title. It looks, it sounds like a neat show or a neat idea. And what's this all about? Now I go and check out the description and I check out the show titles. This looks grabby. I'm looking at the notes now. All of these things happen, and they psychologically tell a person this is something you're going to love, or this is something you should probably keep scrolling past before they ever press play. So not paying attention to those key items on the front end is going to damage you no matter what your content's like, because this all is one big system when it all comes down to it. If one piece is broken, more than likely you're not going to be able to sustain the growth you're looking for. Period.
Yeah. And we talk about branding all the time, and it's a word that gets a bad rap. But if you think about just as reputation, your reputation lies on how you present your product, your show, your artwork, your titles. So if somebody clicks on a title because they think it sounds good and then they see crappy artwork, they might bail just because the professionalism doesn't look like it's there. You need to hold that line of professionalism from start to finish.
Yes.
So people know when they click on your show that they're going to get a good quality product from start to finish.
That's 100% correct. And I'm going to beat on the drum that I have beat on a few times throughout this season and even back in season 2, attention spans. We're living in a world where I would say it feels like by the time I finish this sentence, everybody's attention span will have dropped another degree. If you're not getting your people, your listeners, the new audience members that are showing up for your podcast to the reason they showed up as fast as possible, that's going to cause them to bail too. Now, I don't have hard and fast numbers on this, but I just go by my gut feeling on the fact that I hit play on a podcast because the title stood out to me. It's exactly what I was looking for. I did a search and this is what popped up. Everything else that we've discussed already aligns. The show art looks really good. A nice title to the show. It's got a cool name. It's got good show notes. It's in words describing to me what I'm going to experience when I press play. And then I press play and I've got this 1.5-minute introduction. And then I've got this monologue of nonsense talking about nothing in particular, mainly what I want to hear. And then they might throw in an ad, or then they might throw in my biggest one, housekeeping. All of this bullshit that prevents me from getting to where I want to be.
And
we have to get our people.
Just move
there's
to
nothing.
The backside.
Well, there's times and places for everything, and this is where. And again, if you get into the actual content, let's say I hung out and suffered through all of that, and now you bring me to the interview that you had with somebody, and your first question is, "Tell me about yourself."
Right.
Now you've got another, usually at 5 minutes at a minimum, but sometimes that can go longer because the person doesn't feel like they have a restriction. So they're telling their story from birth to today.
Right. And
that can cause a person
to follow up.
Yeah. What's that?
They don't even pause for you to have a follow-up. So
No. And that's why you have to start your podcast with the content that people showed up for. What I've discovered since I consciously made this switch to focus on the bulk of the show, the main reason, whatever is in that title, we're talking about it right out of the gates. What I've discovered with everybody that I've talked to is that little points about what that person does and their story of how they've got to where they are is going to get dropped in throughout the conversation. It's a much more natural thing versus somebody having to sit at the beginning, in a lot of cases, sitting there staring at you while you read a 2 to 3 minute LinkedIn bio. Then they followed up with, "Tell me about yourself." So in a lot of ways, they're repeating that. And now they've got to go on with their story for X amount of minutes. Get right to the freaking content. I know you do this. You ask questions right out of the gates. I've done that too. First question, boom, we're off and running. That's going to keep a person captivated. And that's how you can grow, because they're going to respect you for getting them to the reason they showed up as fast as possible.
Well, and then the guest will still, like you said, they'll get their story out throughout the questions that you're asking throughout the night. But at that point, the listener is more inclined to care about what their story is because they've already learned something from that guest.
Exactly.
If they don't learn anything from the guest and you hit them with the backstory, they're like, why do I need to know this?
I mentioned that in my solo episode that I did this season about 2025 podcast intros. Your content is what's going to validate your guest. You don't have to spend 20 minutes at the beginning from your monologue to an intro to letting them tell their story for it to validate why they're there. Your loyal listeners are going to understand you're there for them. You respect their time, therefore you're bringing them the best possible guest you can. If you deviate from that and you start bringing in people that make no sense and don't align with the objective of your show, you're going to have bigger problems than what we're talking about today, because things are just going to plummet, and ultimately you're going to burn out because you're just going to get bored because the people you're talking to are not engaging you. Right. So thinking about the validation of your content thinking about how your content validates versus having to spend time doing it yourself, it's going to save you time. But again, it's going to get you and your listeners into the main reason they showed up right out of the gates. And that's what it's all about.
Well, as we talk about guests too, I think leveraging a guest is a good way to grow your audience. But like you said, you have to do it strategically. You can't just bring a guest on, especially if you're trying to market yourself as an expert. You can't put the spotlight on your guest and then have you come across as that expert. So to me, if you're going to bring a guest on, it should be to support the information that you're providing.
Yes.
So when I used to be an educator, I used to teach at a college. I would go ahead and teach my lectures throughout the week. And then at the end of the week, I would bring in somebody from the field, and they would speak about what I taught that week to support the ideas that I taught those students throughout the week, to show them that this is not just something to get you through school. This is also something you're going to use in the field.
Right. That's the thing about having a guest too. And I think this is something when we talk about growth, you have to factor in who you want the attention to be on. there are shows that are designed to put the spotlight on the guest, and the host is there almost as a moderator. Yes, they need to ask engaging questions, but I look at my show and I look at shows like Joe Rogan and some other bigger shows and even smaller shows. Like it's different flavor for everybody, but I'm more about the conversation. And I've heard this 80-20 statistic passed around to where the guest should only be, or I'm sorry, the host should only be speaking 20% of the time and the guest 80. And if you're flirting with a 50-50 split or crossing over that 50% line, you're doing it wrong. I disagree. I think it depends on what you want that show to be about and how you want to position your content. I position this as powerful conversations with like-minded individuals. I would hope for that 50-50 split. We both have insight. When we have 3 people here on this panel, everybody's getting equal opportunity to share their insight and position themselves as someone that knows what the hell they're talking about. That's how this show is designed. But a growth strategy for someone listening to this may be to just do solo content because they are trying to position themselves as the resource that their audience needs. They can accomplish much more from putting their content out there in a way where they're speaking one-on-one, they're showcasing their knowledge, they're putting their expertise center stage, and then there's no division. The audience knows as they listen to that person talk that they're the one, they're the people that, or they're the person that's going to get them from A to B.
Right. And your show is not an interview-based style show, or at least typically. It's a conversational style show.
Yep.
So we're not doing a big introduction for a guest. We're coming on here to talk about a topic, a topic that we both are familiar with and we're both passionate about. And hopefully when we talk about that, that's engaging the listener and we're giving the listener what they're coming for based on your title. So, and I mean, we could go down. I mean, I know we're hitting points, but if there's specific points or specific strategies we want to go over, you talked about names, the name of the show, the name of your episode. We want to be strategic when we name things so they appear in search. So we need to think about those type of things. We need to leverage our guests. Social media is one of those things that, it's a love-hate thing. People are on it 24/7, but people don't like the idea of trying to create something to post it every day.
Right.
But if you're strategic about it, those things help you. So there's all sorts of different ways you can be strategic about growing your show. And I'll leave it to you to which one of those you'd like to dive into, but I know we are on a time limit. Because our steak is
sorry to put the cuffs on you today, brother.
Our steak is almost done because we're going.
I also have to say, I also point out the people watching the video are probably seeing this too. You're like a giant compared to me right now.
I'm a big guy.
You really are. What's going on? You're like zoomed right in on the camera.
Well, that's because you like this view of your screen here, but my camera is more than an arm's length away.
Oh, wow. Well, okay.
I mean, I could do this.
You're fine. No, stay on the microphone. I can hardly hear you then either, so you got to make sure you're up close.
Sorry, sir. I'm losing my voice.
Let's get back on the subject. So I will say with names, I have another episode on the schedule that will be part of the solo series this year, talking all about names. And this is something that I paid more attention to because if we want to go with the low-hanging fruit of what you shouldn't do, it's saying episode 3 with Jason Sircone or episode 10 with Jay Franze, because that does nothing to grab attention. If the people that find you don't know who Jay Franze is or Jason Sircone is, they're not listening. They need a reason to click play. I've had more fun in the last 2 seasons since I really started to emphasize coming up with creative, hooky type of names. Not only am I doing it as a means of grabbing attention, but I'm doing it for that SEO factor. Overall, it's just fun. It's fun to get creative. And when you think about what we're building here as podcasters, it's a creative space. And we want to put our best foot forward in regards to creativity. That spans every aspect of the podcasting game, not just content. So starting with the name, putting yourself in a creative space and really trying to do something that's going to make somebody go, ooh, that's interesting. I want to listen to what this person is saying based on what I'm reading here. That's what hooks are all about. And again, have fun with that.
I spend a lot of my time on the road, whether it be traveling for music events or whether it be traveling to different offices that I oversee. So I listen to a lot of podcasts. And today I turned on my app and I wanted to see what was new, what has come out today. And there was one, I won't name it, but it is a podcast about podcasting that is held by a high level podcasting company. And right out of the gate, it said episode, whatever, 122, and then the name of the show. It didn't tell me, I couldn't see anything within readable text that told me what that episode was about.
Oh, nothing about the name of the episode, just the name of the show.
It was just off screen.
Oh.
So they put it so far at the end of their title that I couldn't see it on the app or on my car's screen.
So it was like episode 120 of Let's Blow This Up and then the title.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely a mistake.
Yeah, so I mean, I get it. People think that you need that number in there so people can reference your show.
Yeah.
I number every one of my episodes, but I don't put it in the title.
Right. That's the thing. I know this has been a debate. I don't think it's necessary because, for one, if you do put it in your server, like I use Buzzsprout, and it gives you the ability to track season and episode number, or if it's a bonus episode, whatever. But that number being in the title, who cares? Because, again, people are going to find your show at different points for different reasons. They're going to be searching for certain criteria, and if your podcast delivers that, it doesn't matter if it's episode 12 or episode 57. As long as you are hitting them with what they showed up for, the hopes are they listen to that episode, they like what they hear, then their next step is what else is in this catalog. And they could listen to that in any order. That's the beauty of on-demand content. You don't have to have an order to it unless you're some type of serial type of podcast where it's going in succession and you need to follow it in order for it to make sense. But if it's evergreen like you and I are creating, I don't think episode titles need to be in there at all. I'm sorry, episode numbers need to be in there at all.
So what you're saying is people aren't searching for episode 120?
I don't think so.
Well, I think there is one benefit that I could think of having the titles or the numbers within the, not within the title, but the numbers. The value of having a number is when it comes to search. Like not search for the listener who's trying to discover a new show, but a current listener of your show. So at the end of a show, like you've mentioned a couple times through in here that you have other episodes coming up. But if you could say, I have on episode 22, we talked about this. And then your listener knows, I want to catch that. And all they have to do is remember 22, 22, 22.
That makes sense.
And then they can go back and like for mine on my website, I title it, jayfranze.com/episode 22. That's where I don't deviate. I don't put the full like catchy name. I put the name that I need people to be able to reference quickly.
Okay.
So to me, that's the only value I could see of putting a number in is when you want to do a reference to your current listener base.
I can see that. I have a client that does just the number. And so it never does interfere with the title. The title is always going to be seen. And that's the most important part. But for just the sake of being chronological, those numbers are there. It doesn't hurt it. To tie it back to what we've really labeled as our theme for this conversation, do you think with what you saw on that podcast that had the episode number and the name of the show before it ever got to the title, do you think that's impacting their growth?
100%, because I could tell you, I lost respect for those people who are calling themselves experts, knowing that they are running a high-profile podcasting company, and they're telling us how to title things, and they don't do it themselves.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
If nothing else, it's making me feel like they don't truly know what they're talking about. And to be fair, there's a lot of people who deviate and have different ways of doing things. So who cares? But for me personally, I couldn't tell what that show was about, so I chose a different show. So that happened.
Yeah.
And I'll probably still go back and listen to it because
now you're curious.
People. Well, I like the people, so I listen to their show.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have gone back to listen to it if I didn't know the people, if I wasn't a fan of them.
You bring up a very interesting point, Jay, and I know this is something that you and I are going to talk about on a future episode that's coming up in this season. Setting your own standards and practices for what's going to make you grow and what's going to keep you engaged in the process, because if you lose engagement, you're never going to grow. But I would say, based on what we've talked about today, we have a pretty concrete vision of what we think titles should be. If someone is binging podcast-related podcasts right now, there's more than likely, there's a huge chance they're going to find another episode that says to do it a completely different way that you and I discussed. And then after they get done with that one, they're going to find another episode that's going to tell them a completely different way than the first two shows. Point being, there is a lot of information out there, and you could easily get consumed with paralysis by analysis. Right. Ooh, this person said here, so I got to try this and this. Like, no, you've got to figure out one way to do it. So if you believe what Jay and I are saying today is the best way for you to move forward, you do that. If you listen to the next show and you think their method is better, great. But don't get so wrapped up in trying to figure out what 16 different people said and then figure out which is the best. Do what makes you happy. Do what looks good for you. But at the same time, think of all the factors that we're talking about and make your overall judgment from that.
Do what you think is best for your audience. So for me, my audience, it's very convenient for them to, if I reference an episode number and not a name. And I've only found that out throughout the years. I've done it from day one, but I've only found out throughout the years that it's a lot easier for them to just remember a number and go back and find something. And I'm a big fan of the number. And I don't mind it being at the front of the title if it's just a number. If it's like 10 dot and then you've got the show. That doesn't bother me because I can still see the title of the show, or at least enough of it to know what it's about. And it's very easy to scroll through by number and find the episodes people are referencing. A lot of people say if you want to put a number in, put it at the end. So you can say, podcast growth strategies, comma, episode 22. And then you get the best of both worlds. You get the title up front. The problem with that is cars in podcast players truncate that. And you never get to see the episode 22 part. So if you just put the number, at least you're strategizing the title where you can see a number. You don't put the word episode and take up that space. Just put 22 and then the title. Yeah.
Two things I'll add to that. For one, and you can give me your thoughts on this before I go to the second point. If I grab somebody's attention with the title, let's say we're on Apple Podcasts. Ooh, that title looks great. And they click on it. The second they land on the episode, right below the show art is going to say episode whatever. So, because it's right there in plain sight, does it also need to be in the title? That's another argument against. I guess you could go either way.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's true, but you have to click on it to see that, where if you're scrolling through a list of titles, you're not clicking yet.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, it's a preference thing. I don't put the numbers in my titles. Because I want to save the space. I would rather have something that says what the person's going to come there for. And like you said, when we started this whole thing, to bring it all the way back around, if I click play because I saw a title that I wanted to hear, if the very first statement, once we get past the introduction, isn't about what we said in the title, then I'm bailing.
Yeah.
Because, I might give it the chance or go through it, but personally, I would rather see it that way. I would rather see it right out of the gate. So for me, like, my shows have multiple sections to them. I always start the title off with the first section. So that way, once we get past that title, the first question goes, that's the title. Mm-hmm. So
I think that's a great way to build a format. I will say to wrap this up, and when thinking about growth, I think where we went with this conversation, it makes sense, and this is where I feel like maybe a half an hour isn't enough time for this particular subject, because I feel like we could go a long ways because
we've hit like 2 points,
right? Like there's a lot in what we've covered, and I think to put a bow on this, I'll say this: for growth's sake, do think about all those items and how they work for you. But growth as a whole, you have to be patient. You have to be committed to what you're building. You have to understand that as you continue to build content, you're going to get better at it. The overall impact of that content on your audience is going to improve. And big things will happen. There's no magic number on when. Many people say it's 100 and beyond, and that could happen, but there's nothing to say that episode 30 doesn't make your show pop off. Nobody's going to have an exact answer to that. But you'll never experience it if you get too hung up on numbers and let those dictate whether you grow. Now, of course, more numbers coming in, that's going to help your show take off. But if you're consumed by it, you're thinking about the wrong things. The items that we ran down today, tip of the iceberg. I think, Jay, you agree with me. We've just really got the party started as we wind this down. But I think patience is a virtue, a lesson for life, obviously, but it's a lesson for how you produce your podcast. Jay, I will leave you with the final thought as we wind this down.
Final thoughts for me would be to experiment. Don't be afraid to experiment. Try things. Find out what truly does work for your audience. However, when you experiment, do it strategically. So you're considering your brand and all the things we discussed. Keep that all in mind and don't go off brand. But change things up a little bit. Maybe, change your titles around and see which works. I still change my titles to this day. I still experiment with them. I still try different things. And I can tell you that I can see them grow based on different, strategic patterns I take. So I think that's important, and I'll keep doing it. I'll just try to find what's working best for me.
Yep. And you have fun with it, right?
Oh, absolutely.
The fun is in the experimentation, in my opinion, finding out what works for you. And you can one thing to remember, you're the boss. So you get to make changes where you want to. It's your show. So when you're thinking about growth, a lot to take in from this episode, but Jay, season 4, we're going to have to do part 2. You're officially invited back.
Oh, okay.
I'll bring the steaks. You bring the chicken sandwich or the chicken nuggets. So, all right. If no one, I'll throw this out as we wrap this up, Bomb Squad. If you have no idea what Jay and I are talking about,
episode number to reference.
I do. Season 1, episode 6 with Jay Franze. We got into a big debate about steak and chicken wings, or as Jay would call them, chicken nuggets, because he likes boneless chicken wings and he's out of his freaking mind. On that note, Jay, I want to thank you once again for being here as always. I know we're going to see you again a couple more times here in the Co-Host Collective series. And to everyone in the Bomb Squad, thank you very much for hanging with us for this episode. We'll see you again on the next episode. On behalf of Jay Franze, my name is Jason Sircone, reminding you to stay explosive.